First of all, on this 11th Sunday of Ordinary Time, on behalf of myself and Father Lita, we'd like to wish all the fathers a very, very happy Father's Day. And speaking of fathers, it kind of reminds me of our stories today in the gospel. Growing up as a farmer's son, I can appreciate the gospel passage that we heard. For many years, I watched my parents do what they loved, planting, growing, and harvesting crops. My father would agree that he planted the seed, nurtured it to the best of his ability, but it was truly a wonder, a work of God, you might say, on how the seed grew into a new plant, returning 60, 80, even 100-fold as their crop is harvested. But what amazes me even more today is that when I look back, I realize that my parents were planting more than seeds within the ground. In their actions and in their words, my parents were planting seeds within my heart and soul, letting me become a work of God. When we look at our life today, what do we see that's different compared to a life a year ago, 3, 5 years, maybe even 20 years ago? Now, I'm not talking about the circumstances or events that have happened in our life. I'm asking about us. In what way have we changed? What are the things that guide and direct our life? Have our values or priorities changed? What troubles our souls or maybe breaks our heart? Do you view the world different today than you did as a child? Has our self-image or maybe our spirituality changed over the years? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you're probably wondering exactly how did that happen? When I look back on my life, I can see changes, both large and small, that were for the better. But I can't point to any one particular thing that made those changes happen. My life of prayer today is very different than it was a few years ago, and I'm not really sure how that changed, but I know it has. My passion for justice, peace, and the well-being of others has grown in ways that I can't explain. My guess is that each of you could probably say similar things or similar aspects in your life. And that's not to suggest that any of our lives has been a straight and narrow path going from point A to point B. We know better than that. That's not how change works. There are ups and downs, and each of those make us into the person that we are today. But the reality, as Jesus describes it in the parable of the growing seed, is that there is a dynamism about our lives, or a spirit that's moving within us. Every one of us has been seeded, and something is growing within us. Sometimes we don't see it, sometimes we don't believe it, and sometimes we just don't trust it, but it's there. And sometimes it takes years before we see that first green blade rise up. Other times we wake up one day and are surprised about the change that has happened within us. How did it happen? When did it happen? The parable we hear today in Mark is not about agriculture. Jesus uses those images of gardening and farming to talk about your life and my life. His parable is a metaphor for the way God works in our lives, and it's meant to be an encouragement and to offer hope to us. Our lives are like the field that has been planted with seeds. Seeds, once planted, do not spring up overnight. It takes time, and a lot happens underground, hidden within the soil of our lives. There is a lot of waiting, and then one day something sprouts and begins to grow. First the stalk, then the head, and then the full grain in the head. We are always in process, living into our completion, becoming the person that God knows us to be. Jesus said that it was like someone scattered seed upon the ground. And I have to wonder, who were those people in our lives that scattered those seeds? Let's take a moment real fast and reflect. Who are the people that loved you and encouraged you? Who were the ones that offered wisdom and guidance for your life, spoke difficult truths that changed our life? Who are the ones that gave us hope, stood by us, helped us find ourselves? In what way did they offer us a place for us to put down our roots, to find stability, and to get our life in order? Who has awakened us and opened our eyes to see the world, to see others, and to see ourselves differently? Who has inspired and mentored us? who has called forth from us more than we ever thought we had, building us into the better person we are today. Every one of these things are seeds scattered by someone within our lives at a certain point or a certain season of our life. And as you think about that, let me ask you, who's doing that for you today? Who is scattering the seeds across your fields of your soul and your heart? I know that my parents, my wife, and many, many others have scattered seeds across the fields of my life, and I truly owe them a debt of gratitude and thanks. However, the best way to pay them back, to say thank you for what they have done, is for you and I to become seed scatterers ourselves. We need to go out and toss seed into the lives of others around us. Let me ask you a couple of questions that I had to sit down and ask myself. Have you ever forgiven and reconciled with another, or maybe asked them for forgiveness themselves? Have you put another's interest before your own? Who have you encouraged? Who have you loved? Who have you reached out to in compassion? When have you sat down with someone in his or her grief and said, I will be there for you? Have you spoken out and worked for justice? These actions are the seeds that we plant inside of others in the barren fields of their lives. And there is plenty of barren ground out there just waiting for us to scatter our seeds. We need to plant these barren fields with your life, your gifts, your passions, your presence, and your concerns. Whose life are you going to go out and seed? Is it your children who's grown up in our world today? Is it the migrant family seeking a better life for themselves and for their children? Maybe you are the sower of those struggling with loneliness, fear, or despair. Or maybe you're called to plant seed in the barren ground of grief, pain, or heartbreak. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, Deacon Chris, that's all well and great, but how can I, one person, make such a difference? What seeds do I have that would impact someone's life? You know, Jesus kind of addresses that in our other part of the gospel today. Our job, you see, is to scatter the seed and to let it take root. Our job is not to worry about how that seed is going to grow. As we heard today, even the smallest seed, that mustard seed, can give refuge to all the birds of the skies. We don't have to worry about the seeds that we scatter. God will take care of the rest, allowing those seeds to grow when, where, and how He needs them to. Now, standing here, I am well aware that I have asked you more questions than I've given you answers. And to be honest, all of our journeys are different, so I don't have any definite answers for you. And to be honest, Jesus doesn't give us any in the Gospels either, in the parable. And that's the thing with parables, you see. They don't offer answers. What they do is they ask us better questions. They give us work to do, and they offer a different lens through which we see ourselves, others, in the world. And maybe seeing differently is the beginning of becoming different. What is the parable showing you about your life in the world around you? What do you see today as you look? Now, in looking, we will see things within our world and within ourselves. But I want you to remember, whatever you see, know that it is just information. Don't turn it into a judgment. Don't turn it into a conclusion. It's just information for us to do something with. What will you do with what you see, though? Celebrate and give thanks? Water, fertilize, prune? Maybe pull a few weeds and make some changes? Perhaps Meister Eckhart, a 14th century German monk, says it's best when we're talking about the seeds in our gospel today. The seeds of God is in us. Given an intelligent and hard-working farmer, it will thrive and grow up to God, whose seed it is. And accordingly, its fruit will be God nature. Pear seeds grow into pear trees, nut seeds into nut trees, and a God seed into God. May the fields of your life be full and overflowing as you go out and scatter the God seeds in the lives of others.